The Consulting Success podcast is powered by the Clarity Coaching Program. If you'd like to work directly with the Consulting Success team and receive personal coaching and support to optimize and grow your consulting business, marketing, and revenue, visit consultingsuccess.com to find out more and apply.
Welcome to the Consulting Success Podcast. I'm your host, Michael Zapersky. In this podcast, we'll dive deep into the world of elite consultants, where you'll learn the strategies, tactics, and mindset to grow a highly profitable and successful consulting business. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Consulting Success Podcast. Michael Zapersky here, and today I'm very excited to have Babita Devi joining us. Babita, welcome.
Thank you, Michael. I'm delighted to join you today.
Yeah, I really enjoyed our conversation before hitting the record button. But now we get to dive into what everybody has been waiting for. I'll do a quick little intro for those who aren't familiar with you and your work, Babita, but you're the director of Be Strategic, where you provide business development coaching for founders looking to scale their business. And you've lectured on marketing at a couple of universities. Your clients include Judge Business School, Barclays Eagle Labs, Oxford Innovation, and a whole bunch of others. And you also serve on 3 boards of 3 different companies. So I want to get into all of that and certainly get into your experience of what really makes the difference when people want to accelerate the growth in their company. But before we do that, I always like to get a little bit of the backstory so people can learn kind of where you came from and what did that look like. So before you actually started consulting, what were you doing? Take us back in time to your education, where you grew up. What was that like?
Yeah, sure. So I actually am from West Bromwich. Please do not hold that against me for those of you who know the West Bromwich football team. As I was saying to you earlier, Michael, my parents both moved to the UK when they were quite young. And my dad actually, at the tender age of 12, gave up his education and started working. He moved here to look after his grandfather at the time, who was quite poorly. My parents married in the UK, and they held on to a lot of their culture as well as they moved here. So when I actually started school, when I started nursery, I couldn't even speak English. So Punjabi was the language that we spoke at home, was brought up in a very traditional Indian culture. And I would say that was true pretty much all the way up into my 20s. I had an arranged marriage at the age of 20. So very much, although even I was brought up in a Western culture, very much an Eastern upbringing. So I actually wanted to go to art college and study fine art, would you believe? But there was no career in that. Of course, my dad said, you're not going to study fine art. So we compromised on graphic design. So I actually went to college and studied graphic design, but very quickly fell into marketing. And I started work in the IT space, actually, was where I started my corporate career. And I was involved, I'm about to give my age away now, I was involved in setting up the very first computer superstore in the UK before it got bought out by PC World and then later Currys. But I started my career in IT. Very early, in my early 20s, I became a manager. And by the time I was 26, I was managing a budget of about $750,000, a marketing budget. I stayed in IT for quite a long time. I moved from desktop computers and software through to ERP solutions. So went from marketing multi-million-pound software basically. And then after that, I worked in optics for a while. Then in 2003, I moved to Australia and I lived in Australia for 3 years. And at that point, I decided to set up my own marketing company. Lived out there for 3 years, worked with some really interesting and diverse clients, and then moved back to Birmingham in 2005. So that's Birmingham in the UK. And then moved around a lot. So stayed in Birmingham for 3 years. I worked at the University of Birmingham there, managing all of their marketing outside of academia. So they had these several commercial divisions and I was responsible for marketing those. And then I moved to Oxford and lived in Oxford for 3 years and then moved to Cambridge. And so with all of that moving around, I mean, I was really fortunate in that I could take my business with me. And one thing I found quite early on with all of my roles was I would work quite often with the senior management team, which is why I kind of fell into coaching a little bit and mentoring, as opposed to making a conscious decision that that was going to be my career. But with all of that moving around, the other thing that I decided to do was to set up a tech business. And so I learned how to code, I learned how to manage developers, I learned how to raise investment. But most importantly, I learned about all of the pain that startups go through And that really helped significantly when I started doing my coaching work in a more comprehensive manner. Yeah. So with all that moving around, the tech company I started, but then when I moved to Cambridge, I had the opportunity to go and lecture entrepreneurial marketing at one of the universities here in Cambridge. And it was the very first time I stepped foot in a university, was to go and deliver that to the master's students there at the business school. And then after that, I went on and lectured marketing to business studies students as well. And then finally, I ended up at the Judge Business School, which is part of Cambridge University. And that's where I work on their Accelerate program. And that's a cohort of about 65 companies. And that's everything from startup, and I've got a brilliant idea, right through to VC rounds. So that's a broad spectrum. But some of the companies that you mentioned, with Barclays Eagle Labs, with my own coaching business, with Oxford Innovation, with the role I do there as Innovation Director, they're all very similar roles in that they're all coaching roles.
Right. So I have a whole bunch of questions because you just took me through a lot there. Let's go back in time. You mentioned that at a pretty young age, you moved up into management level or a manager type of role. What do you feel contributed most? Like looking back on that time, what kind of characteristic or attitude or behavior did you bring forward that you feel really contributed to you being able to move up the corporate ranks and get noticed for the work that you were doing?
One thing I think in particular was the thing that actually is still true for me today, which is I find it relatively easy to join up the dots for people. So I'm able to extract information and connect. I mean, I'm a huge connector and collaborator, even now with all of my coaching roles. And one thing that becomes quite clear to me very early on, even with my very first call that I'll have with any coaching client, will be that almost kind of a few paths that they can take. And then the next part of that becomes, okay, what is it? What are their aspirations? And how do I coach them to step into what the business needs from them? But that was also, I found that very early on with my roles in those IT companies, was just being able to join up the dots for people. And I think sometimes people become very insular, very parochial in their view, in that there's this one thing that they're trying to work on. And I think coaches typically tend to be more visionary, just in characteristic.
So for someone right now, let's take the consultant working just day in, day out in their business. Maybe they're solo, maybe they have a team around them and they're kind of insulated. They're in their bubble because they're busy doing their thing. And so they likely are missing a bunch of dots that they could connect. What advice would you offer them? Like, what can they do right now to start being able to see some of those dots and be able to make connections that otherwise they might not be able to make?
I think there's a lot to be said for personality profiling, like for sure, Myers-Briggs or any of that stuff, right? If you look at the way people tend to operate, some individuals are all about the detail. They're about the process. They're about following step by step and very linear in their approach.
Right.
I think if that is you and you want to take your business to the next level of growth, then I would say hire a coach or build your team so that you have a good mixture of somebody who's more visionary and can complement what you're doing so that you can move faster. For sure, I'm not saying that if you're all about the detail and all about the process that you can't have vision, but I'm saying that together you could move so much faster by having that right mix of personality traits within the team.
I think that's really powerful advice. So often, especially for solo consultants, they find that this initial kind of thinking of I need to be conservative. Maybe the reason why I left employment or the corporate world is because I didn't want to manage people anymore. But it's if you are like that very detailed person, if you tend to maybe overthink things or just whatever your kind of characteristics or traits are, sometimes it's counterproductive to try and kind of like work against the tide in it or the wave. And if you can just find either, let's say, a coach or hire people or bring even contractors, freelancers on that can help you to accelerate and kind of support you in some of those areas that you might be weak, it's a game changer. So I think that's really powerful advice.
You know, the other thing as well, Michael, is that those people are worth their weight in gold. Like to find people who are really about process and operational and about getting things done, they are equally important. So, and there's a lady I'm working with at the moment who is amazing. She's brilliant at all the detail. Like she works at Oxford Innovation. Without her, I can't see everything being as efficient as it is. So it's not always about, everybody doesn't have to be a visionary. It's about getting the right mix as well in that team.
Yeah. So let's come back to the time when you decided, you know what, I'm going to strike out on my own and start my own. I believe you said marketing company was kind of the first one that you launched. Why did you do that? Why not just kind of
Oh,
continue working? What was the impetus for that?
well, I might have to take you back to my childhood a little bit for that. Because,
Please do. Yeah, let's do it.
so actually, I mean, there's so much of the way we are as adults is pretty much set in concrete by the time we're 9, right? Is it like 9 years old? You know, we've decided how our life is going to unfold. So I came from an environment where it was tough. Like I had a tough upbringing. It was a challenging time for my parents. They were young parents and had 5 of us. And my dad, very early on, decided that he was going to become an entrepreneur. And he was a terrible business. he was a failing entrepreneur, but he tried so many different things. And he taught me the most valuable lesson of all, which is failure is just a thing that you can just come out the other side. You just pick yourself back up and you keep going. And so it's probably no surprise that my siblings and I, most of us are very entrepreneurial. We saw our dad have a go at creating businesses, come out the other side, and it's fine if it doesn't work. So there's definitely, I'm built in a way that whole risk taking isn't really a big issue for me. So I wanted to have my own company from quite a young age. However, I also realized the value of being in corporate, having that experience under my belt, making the connections, and really understanding how industry operates. And so when the opportunity to move to Adelaide and set up my own business came about, I just grabbed it with both hands. And then I think once you start down that route, it's very difficult then to turn back.
Yeah.
So creating my marketing company, which is now really a coaching business, and then creating a tech startup, like tomorrow, if I had a brilliant idea, I wouldn't hesitate. I would just give it a go because what's the worst that happens? It doesn't work, but you learn a lot. You learn so much through going through that process.
When you decided to launch that company, what was the first thing that you did to get your first few clients?
With my marketing business?
Yeah, the marketing business.
Interestingly, I've never had to market my business. I've always had through word of mouth. So I ended up working for actually one of the world's biggest party companies. You'll be familiar with Amscan, who own Party City. And I went in there to mentor a marketing team. So I joined them for a period of 6 months and then very quickly transitioned into managing the Disney license for them across the EMEA. And then 7 years later, decided to exit and carry on working with other clients. But with all of my work, really, it's always been word of mouth. And I think that's the thing is that good coaches, word gets out and about. So I think I've been really fortunate, actually, that I've been really well connected. And I am a networker. I have very strong connections. And actually, the most challenging part was moving to Cambridge because Cambridge is a very tight-knit circle here. So breaking into that inner circle in Cambridge was probably the thing that took me the longest time. But most of my work really has been through word of mouth.
I'd love for you to break down that process of how you got into the network of Cambridge. As you mentioned, it's quite hard to penetrate, but once you do, like most networks, there's immense value inside of it. You've mentioned actually a few times that one of the things that contributed to your success in many different roles was your ability to connect with senior level management or decision makers or people that actually have influence. What do you feel, number one, is kind of the key to doing that? It's an area that a lot of consultants do struggle with, right? You want to build a relationship with, say, with the CEO or the CFO or somebody in the C-suite because you know that they are the ultimate decision maker, yet it's hard to penetrate through that and actually access them. Any advice that you would offer for somebody who wants to reach higher levels inside of an organization and how they can start to build those relationships?
I think a lot of that comes down to what your strength is when it comes to marketing. Some people build their whole brand on the back of LinkedIn. They are thought leaders. They'll push out regular content. I mean, you, as with the work that you're doing right through your podcast, which is all about educating people and helping people further their businesses and grow their businesses and accelerate. So I think a lot of it comes down to there's no point in trying to round peg. I was going to a square peg into a round hole.
Right.
What works for you, the individual, that I would say is always a starting point. So if you're the sort of person that loves to network, go out and network. But equally, if you are much better with creating content and a bit like we were saying earlier, you're about the detail, you're about process, share knowledge around that. And your platform isn't necessarily to go out to networking events. You're much better to do a podcast or to share content through social media platforms. So I think too often, and I see it so much at the moment, is that people think that they need to do everything. And I always steer businesses away from that. I always say, do the thing that feels right for you, because you're going to have fun doing it. And your audience is going to enjoy it because that's you in your element.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of it comes down to what's the right thing for the individual that's trying to grow their business. Look, it's tough. And the thing is with coaching is there are so many coaches, right? So in the same way that when I coach businesses, and I always say to them, what is it like? Don't cast your net wide and try and catch everything. Is focus on your niche. And so many businesses, and I'm sure the same is true for coaches, are afraid to focus on a niche because it's almost like, if I focus on a niche, what am I turning away? And I always encourage people to think about, okay, what brings you joy? Why not coach in that space? And much rather be a specialist in a certain sector and have customers who think you are brilliant at what you do, rather than spreading yourself too thinly. And so in the same way that I encourage the companies I coach to go and get business for themselves, I would say the same is true for coaches, which is focus on the areas. Like for me, I love IT. I love all things IT. I'm doing a lot in the life science space. I'm loving that. So find the sectors that are really interesting for you, because when you turn up and you're coaching in that space, it's a different energy. You come across differently. You come across with passion and you're excited and there is success, so you show up differently, I think, when you focus on sectors that you are genuinely interested in.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I mean, we've seen this time and time again with so many of the consultants in our coaching programs that they have the same challenge. It's you feel like you want to cast a really wide net because it equals more opportunity, but it's actually the way to scale and grow is not through addition. It's usually through subtraction and getting very focused. Going back to your example of getting into the community within Cambridge, if we just use that as kind of a bit of an example to work through, is there anything that you did that you feel was maybe different, something that most people would not have thought of, but yet was very effective? And when you're working with your own clients today and they want to get into networks or reach decision makers, is like a tried and true proven approach or proven method? Anything that comes to mind for you?
My main platform is, I don't use a lot of social media, but I use LinkedIn. So LinkedIn has been really key for me. And even with LinkedIn, there's some really basic things that you do, which I don't know if it's always obvious to people, but if you change your one-liner on LinkedIn, so it talks directly to the people you want to sell to, every time you're making comment on something, everybody sees that and they associate you with that one thing. And so I think there's some really basic marketing 101 type things that you can do for sure. But I think when it comes to, I had my heart set on working at the Judge Business School. And the Judge Business School is part of Cambridge University, one of the most preeminent business schools in the whole world, right? So not just in the UK. And so not having been to university to try and be a coach on the Accelerate program at the Judge was going to be challenging. So my strategy was, okay, if that's the end point, if that's what I desire, what are the steps I need to take to go towards that? And so I got involved with universities. I did some lecturing at various different universities. I immersed myself in that space. I also attended a weekend program at Cambridge University, and I got to know some of the people who were working in that space, who were running some of the programs. And so I built a relationship with the people so that those people knew me, the person.
Right.
And so as soon as you're prepared to step out,
While we work with a lot of seasoned and experienced consultants here at Consulting Success, I'm often contacted by new early stage consultants. Invariably, the question I'm asked is, what are the steps I should take to become a successful consultant and grow my consulting business to my first 6 figures per year? Well, I'm excited to announce that we've opened the doors for our Momentum program. This is our most popular program for early stage consultants, and it has helped almost 1,000 consultants to start, run, and grow successful consulting businesses. It gives you the step-by-step plan to help you with your messaging, your fees, and pricing strategies, how to win more proposals, how to go to market more effectively, developing a marketing system to generate leads consistently, and so much more. And right now, until September the 19th, you can sign up for Momentum and get 50% off the regular price by going to consultingsuccess.com/audio. That's consultingsuccess.com/audio, AUDIO. Only 100 spots are available to join Momentum and get 50% off. This deal is only available until September the 19th or until all 100 spots are gone. We won't be opening up new spots in this program for several months. So don't wait. Go to consultingsuccess.com/audio. That's consultingsuccess.com/audio. AUDIO.
Yeah, no, I think so. Sorry to interrupt. Just to clarify and to go a little bit deeper so that everybody can really grasp what you did, because I think it's brilliant. My understanding is that you did not say, hey, I'm going to put in an application to become a coach at this business school. And, oh, I did not get a positive response. I guess this didn't work and move on. You said, I'm going to first work on building relationships to those that have influence over the decision-making process around who becomes a coach at this business program. And so you went out and you paid money to go and attend some weekend training, right? Like you did things that would help you to build relationships with the right people before you tried to get something. So you were giving value or creating a presence before you just tried to extract value. Is that correct? Or am I missing anything there?
No, that's correct. And so even to the point that I didn't apply, I actually contacted them and said, look, I would love to be a coach on the program. There was no application process. So it wasn't like there was a vacancy.
Right.
So, but this comes back to me being really clear on what it is I want. And I wanted to be a coach on that program. And so I just worked backwards in terms of what do I need to do to get to that point. But you're right, so people deal with people. That's the black and white of it. Whichever way you translate it, even when you go to an interview, somebody's going to decide pretty much straight away whether they're going to hire you or not. So this whole, don't underestimate the value of you, the person, and make sure that you're stepping into that at every opportunity. And that's why if you do have the chance to go and rather than follow a conventional process of going and working somewhere, is build relationships with people.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic. So you have a pretty interesting vantage point over many different companies and organizations that you coach or that you sit on their board. When you look at today, 2022, with everything that's been going on in the world, what are you seeing? Like, is there anything that stands out to you as a marketing approach, as a way to generate leads and acquire clients or to create more conversations that you feel is just a big opportunity that maybe most people aren't using or aren't taking advantage of, or just more people should do it?
It's an interesting time that we're going through. Just in the UK, in 2020, I think it was something like 50,000 new businesses were being created every month. We're seeing more new business created now than ever before. The one thing that I find more often than not with companies, startup and scale-up companies, is commercializing. Like people have got great ideas, but the minute you say to them, okay, let's put that in front of the customer, there's always a level of nervousness. So you typically tend to have people sitting in one or two camps. You either have those have got a great idea, but they really struggle to take it to the next level because there's a fear around doing that. Or you have people who just hit the ground running with selling something, and then they've got a different set of challenges because now they need to look at organization structure and all of that stuff. But you definitely have more in that first camp than you do in the second. And so I think a large part of the work that I do, like my sweet spot, if you like, is helping companies to understand where their growth can come from and then what growth does the individual need to go through. For example, some of the companies on the Accelerate program at the Judge, they will go through and they'll do a raise. And now that individual needs to, say they raise like 10 million, that individual now needs to show up and run a company that's just raised 10 million.
Right.
And that's a big step up, right? So, and that's kind of the space I work in. So growth for the business, but also, and more importantly, what does growth for the individual look like? And that I think is quite fun.
Yeah, I'd love to go a little bit deeper into that because it reminds me of a conversation I had with one of our clients recently, higher level client in one of our coaching programs, who fairly recently made the shift from being a very successful solo consultant and viewing themselves as a consultant to now looking at themselves as a CEO and building a team around her and really seeing great things happening, a lot of progress being made. And it's a very interesting shift from having the mindset of I'm a consultant to, oh, no, not I'm a leader, I'm a CEO, right? I have to operate like that. In order for somebody to step up to that higher level, and when I say higher, I don't necessarily mean better, but just a different level, because you have to see different things, think about different things, right? Focus on different things. Your role is different. You need to develop as a person, right? Or as a leader. What do you typically suggest that people do? What are some of the kind of the best practices for personal development?
So there's many, but one of the things I would say first and foremost, and this is always a big aha moment for people, is to recognize that they are not the company. Like that person is not the company, right? And I think that separation is like a really big step for many people as their businesses start to grow. And I think within that as well, then is how do you surround yourself with the best people possible in their discipline? Like your team should be better than you at that thing that they're doing. Otherwise, you haven't got the right team. So sometimes I think when it's your business, you can want to have complete control over everything. And that letting go of control and recognizing that the business is now an entity and it's not you is a big step change, I think, for a lot of entrepreneurs. So stepping into that. And then on the back of that it depends what stage your business is at. So we touched earlier on 2Y3X program, like joining an accelerator is always brilliant. And we have the same with the Accelerate program at the Judge Business School. You have access to 10 coaches who all have different areas of expertise and who can all help you based on, do you need to get advice on intellectual property or do you need to get advice on company formation? So based on where you're at, and then right through to programs like the Accelerator, which is, okay, we want to like double, triple our revenue. Like we have big, ambitious goals. And how do we achieve that? And how do we create something that is not so big that it's overwhelming and we can't do anything with it? And then 1 year to the next, we always have these big ambitions, but we never actually manage to get there because we haven't put any plans in place. I think in terms of if businesses are looking for growth, the thing I would say first and foremost is get clear on what that growth looks like. Like just be clear. Is that a revenue target? Do we want to expand internationally? Like what's the ambition? And then again, just coming back to the 2Y3X program, is break that down. What does that look like year 1, year 2, year 3? What does that look like quarter by quarter? And how do you implement that? Because one of the exercises, I pushed that out on a LinkedIn post on earlier this year, which is if you've got a diary, go to the last page of your diary and write in that page what the last 12 months was like. Take yourself forward to that point and actually document what's just happened in the last 12 months.
Yeah.
And even that as an exercise gives you a level of clarity, which is, okay, what is it I actually want to have happen? And how do I take control of that?
Yeah, Cameron Herold has a book called Vivid Vision, which I think is very similar to, it goes kind of a deep dive into that concept around getting very clear as like, what does the future look like? And then paint the picture, not just in terms of, we want to be generating 5 million or whatever the number is, but actually like how many team members do you want? What's your culture like? Where are you working? Like you're getting very, very detailed around what you want things to look like, because obviously once you get clear on that thing, you can actually start to plan and figure out what needs to be done. So I think that's really great advice. For you, as you look at the journey to this point of your own business and your experience, is there anything that you've changed a lot? Like, has your pricing model changed a lot over the years? Is the way that you work with clients, the way that you promote your business, any like big shifts that have happened over the years that might be a big lesson that you could share with others they could also benefit from?
Yeah, let's talk about pricing because that's always like the one that most people are interested in, right? So I've never done a coaching qualification. Like I'm not a qualified coach, right? So all of those coaching roles are based on experience that I've managed to get up until then.
I think you are qualified. You might not be certified, but you're qualified.
Yeah, certified. Good. Yeah. Okay, thank you. Thank you. I should remember that distinction in future. But what I was going to say is I didn't even truly step into that. It took one of my clients to tell me that I am their top rated coach for me to think, okay, I don't need to be certified. Like I'm doing this better than most.
Right.
And I'm making a difference. For me, when a client turns up and they're giving me an hour of their time to coach them, that's the most valuable asset is our time. So for me, that's so important that they get a really good return on that investment of their time. And so it took a client of mine to say to me that you are our top, for me to actually even think about charging good money for my time.
Right.
And the thing with charging for your time is that there's definitely a relationship between value and price. So when you're operating at the lower end of the spectrum, people don't think they're going to get very good coaching. And I've seen this with so many people. And when you're operating at the top end and you're showing up and you're doing a great job, that's matched to the value that they're getting as well. So I am surrounded by a lot of coaches that are at the lower end of the spectrum and they are struggling. And part of the reason I truly believe for that is because people's time is so valuable that they don't even want to operate in that space. They need to be getting good value and are prepared to pay good money for it. And they're coachable. Those people are coachable. I think when you're working at the value end of the spectrum, I think also people there aren't actually coachable. They're not really in it. They're not serious about it.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's a really great point. If somebody is investing a smaller amount of money and it's not significant to them, then when push comes to shove, when they start to face and feel resistance, as they should, if they're being coached properly, like they should be challenged. When they start to get to that place, it's very easy for them to just say, well, okay, like I'm not really going to do this, right? And just kind of put it off or put it aside and then not make the progress that they want. But if they've invested a really significant amount that kind of challenges them and would make them feel pretty bad about themselves and disappointed if they didn't take that action, if they didn't at least try, they're much more likely to try. And then we've seen so many times that when you follow a process that works, you're going to get results. It doesn't mean you're going to get results overnight. It doesn't mean it's going to happen maybe as quickly as you want it to. But if you're doing the right things, you're going to see and you're going to make progress. And I think that's why, making that larger investment at times, even though it might feel a little bit scarier, is actually the fastest way to get the end result that you want and to really make more meaningful progress. That's a great kind of way to look at it.
Absolutely. I think the commitment and conviction is totally different when you're investing in yourself, because that's what coaching is. You're investing in yourself, right? It's personal development.
Totally.
I had a company I was coaching today and they were talking about trying to get market penetration by making their product free, which for me, like if something's free, it's got no value. Like if are people really going to go and use something that's just free? Yeah, I think it's an interesting one price. But I always say to people when it comes to pricing strategy is to think about charging for your time in a way that makes you ever so slightly uncomfortable, not too uncomfortable, but just very slightly uncomfortable. And that's probably the price that you should be charging for your time, is to actually have that feeling inside you, which says, oh, because in the end, we have to put value on our own time as well, right? And this is where it comes. And this also is a good way for your own growth, is to be operating like that. So I think, like I said, I think people's time is so, so precious. My time is precious. Your time is precious, right? The client's time is precious. And so it's about making sure that there's alignment when you're working with somebody on what the perceived value is.
And did you make any big changes or shifts when you going from doing work where it was more a consulting model, more marketing kind of done for you or done with you with clients, to now much more strictly advisory, which is more of the coaching side? Are there any big changes in the model that you used for pricing?
Pricing wise, yes, for sure, because all of my work now is done with business owners. But also, it's really important for me that when somebody's making that investment in me and what I charge people, that they are getting tenfold back. So that's the thing, is like, how do I really make a difference to everyone I'm working with? Yeah. And so every single call to me is as important as the next. And so when I was working in marketing, of course, it was totally different when I was doing the doing, because you're very much in an operational role. When you're coaching, it's very different. You're taking lots and lots of inputs. You're coaching the individual. I mean, it's intense, right? This is the thing, is that turning up and doing marketing work is very operational. As a coach, you are turning up and you're giving 110% of yourself to that individual that wants to go through. I always think to myself that every session needs to be a transformation on a level. Like they need to have come through that call and come out the other side with some improvement or with some insight or with a level of growth. That's my ambition with every call that I have with every client.
Before we wrap up, I have a few more questions I want to get to. The first is that when you look at your own habits and what you feel leads to your higher levels of performance, productivity, just really getting valuable things done, what are one or two things that you do every day that you really feel contribute to that success?
So I meditate. I'm sure most of your coaches probably say this, I don't know. So I take time to sit and think and reflect and just really give myself some headspace.
So when do you do that? In the morning, the evening, during the day?
Very first thing in the morning. And so the best time to meditate, because I know a lot of people say, oh, I struggle because I have so much stuff going on in my head. So the best time to meditate, if you can do it, is as soon as you wake up, is just sit up, even in your bed, and spend some time meditating, because that's when you have access to really, if you like, a part of you that on a subconscious level, you have all this stuff going on in the background. And what you want to do is be able to bring that to the foreground. It's, like sometimes I coach people who wake up in the night and they're really stressed about certain things. And the reason that they're stressed about them in the night and not during the day is because that's the only time they're not thinking about all the other stuff on a conscious level. And so allowing yourself time to meditate and just really connect. And then the stuff that comes up, do something with it. Action it, right? So make it your priority to action that first, right? Before you get stuck into your day, right? And so that I would say is really important. Secondly, any creative thinking, anything that is going to be taking more headspace, do it first before you get stuck into your day. Like don't even go anywhere near your emails until you've done the thing that's really, really important. And then the third piece for me is to be kind to myself, because I think so often we're working with so many people and dealing with so many challenges that they bring into a call. So it's to take a step back and actually allow myself time for me as well. And that has taken me a really long time to learn that.
Tell me more about that. When you say be kind to yourself, give me, if you can, some examples of what that looks like.
Yeah. So I've been working since the age of 14. I started work in a sewing factory when I was 14. And so pretty much my whole life, I realized, and it took me until I was in my 40s to realize that actually my work defined me. Like without my work, I was nothing. I didn't know anything different, right? So that was when I started, I guess, my journey of, okay, who am I? Like, who am I outside of work? And so when I say be kind to myself, it's like go out and, I've joined the gym, right? So I go and I spend time in the gym, and it's not just any gym. I've joined a really nice gym, So when I'm there, I really enjoy the experience and spend time with my family. And when I'm with my family is to be totally present to them, not to be checking my emails and all of that stuff, is to be really present. And it's amazing. And just, if you really struggle, sometimes people say to me, I've got time. And okay, even things like if you're doing back-to-back calls, is organize a call that you can take on a walk, but be outside and take that and stretch, get air, all of that stuff that people talk about all the time, but very few of us actually do. So being kind to yourself is to really look after your health, eat well, take regular breaks, do things that bring you joy. When you are with your family, be totally with your family. Like, don't do this 1 foot in, 1 foot out, because it doesn't serve anyone. And then one of the things that this is getting a little bit personal, I'm truly, truly grateful for every experience I have, whether that's good or bad. Like from challenging stuff, I learn a lot. And from the good stuff, it's just great fun, right? So to be really present to every experience that comes up, and the challenging stuff, it's there for a reason. Like, what do you need to learn from that experience? And when you operate like that, you come out of this victim mentality and you become more present and you even begin to see joy in the things that otherwise can be quite challenging.
Yeah, I love that mindset. 2 more questions, and then we're going to wrap up. But the next one is your favorite book that you've read or listened to in the last 6 months. Could be fiction, nonfiction, just anything that you really enjoyed.
Oh, there's so many. There are so many.
I know. I'm a reader as well. It's a hard question, but just take the first one that comes to mind that you feel, this was a really enjoyable book.
I'm going to say 2. Sorry.
Okay. All good.
Never Split the Difference. Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant book. Have you read it?
No, I mean, I've heard it from enough people. I feel like I know it, but I have not known it. John Voss, right? Okay. The negotiation.
Brilliant. And pretty much he's put some stuff in that book that I've tried and it works. So that is brilliant. Buddha and the Badass, that's written by the founder of Mind Valley, Vishen Lakhiani.
Okay. I've heard about that. I've not read that one.
Yeah. And so again, that's quite a spiritual book, but that again for me really resonated. But there's so many good books at the moment, right? This is the thing. So
totally. Yes.
But I would say they're probably 2 top of the list for me at the moment.
Well, fantastic. I don't know if others have recommended those specifically before on the podcast. So great additions. We'll have that linked up in the show notes. But in addition to that, the other thing that I want to have linked up in the show notes is where people can go to learn more about you, Babita, about your work and about what you do and everything that you have going on. So where's the one place that we should direct people to?
So babitadevi.com is my website. So you can find everything, and obviously link in and reach out. And I'm always more than happy to have a conversation with somebody and help in any way that I can. And even if I'm not the right coach for someone, I can quite often recommend somebody who might be. So
fantastic. Well, Babita, thank you so much for coming on. Really appreciate you sharing some of your journey with us today.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Consulting Success Podcast. For more episodes and to subscribe, rate, and leave a review, head on over to iTunes. And if you'd like to develop consistent lead flow and a highly profitable consulting business, learn more about our coaching programs at consultingsuccess.com.